Welcome to StopFake, the place where we dissect disinformation about Ukraine. We're closing out 2017, and it's that time of year again to look back at some of the best examples of fakes and manipulations engineered by the Kremlin's fake factory. Citing a Bavarian newspaper, last week scores of pro-Kremlin media claimed that Ukraine would accept 20,000 refugees instead of Germany, with headlines such as, "Why does Poroshenko need militants from Asia and Africa?" Referencing a German publication called Krakow News, Russian media claimed that by the end of 2018, Ukraine will accept no less than 20,000 refugees, most likely those who are currently in Bavaria. Now, this deal allegedly resulted from an agreement with Ukraine's Interior Ministry and its German counterpart. This fake began to be widely republished in Russian media during the recent EU Eastern Partnership Summit at the end of November. The Eastern Partnership is a European Union program launched in 2009 in the framework of the European Neighborhood Policy involving Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. But Krakow News is neither Bavarian nor is it a newspaper. It's an open internet portal based in the Baden-Württemberg area, and anyone can post information there. A user calling herself Kirsten Newman, who wrote the article that Russian media cite, registered with Krakow News one day before publishing her fake story on November 1st. Replying to StopFake's inquiry about these claims, Ukraine's Interior Ministry confirmed that German diplomat Dorothea Techovsky, who specializes in human rights, recently presented a human rights project in Kyiv aimed at fostering tolerance towards refugees in Ukraine. All other claims about refugees are patently false, the ministry said. While Ukraine is actively cooperating with Germany on human rights issues, there is no agreement between Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko and German Chancellor Angela Merkel regarding refugees.
Elise Journal, an obscure Russian site, published a story last week claiming that every other member of the Ukrainian Parliament is a criminal, crazy, or a drug addict. StopFake generally does not debunk such obvious and outrageous fakes, but this particular story was viewed more than 15,000 times, shared on Facebook more than 2,000 times, and prominently featured on the official website for Russia's Defense Ministry television channel, Zvezda. The fake focuses on 11 members of Ukraine's parliament, among them Tatiana Chornovol, who the story claims is a patient in a psychiatric institute. In a blog on the Ukrainska Pravda news site, Chornovol points out the factual errors in the claim and sets the record straight. Ukrainian parliamentary speaker Andriy Paruby is called mentally unstable based on a dubious 2014 publication in Commentator. Among the deputies that Elise Journal calls criminals are former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko and current Attorney General Yuri Lutsenko, who were imprisoned during the tenure of ousted Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych for abuse of power, a move universally considered to be political.
Ukraine's health ministry plans to introduce a pilot kidney donor transplant program in 2018. The program has yet to be approved by parliament, but it is already hailed by Russian media as one that will not only destroy public health, but turn Ukraine into a black market transplant center. Ukraine's Deputy Health Minister Oleksandr Linchevsky told StopFake that such claims are part and parcel of a larger Russian disinformation narrative, that Ukraine is establishing an organ transplant black market. Linchevsky points out that proposed Ukrainian legislation stipulates individuals can donate their organs after death. Potential donors are to be registered in a central database. If there is no record of a deceased individual's donor agreement in that database, and if his or her immediate relatives do not give consent, it is illegal to remove organs for transplant from such an individual. The legislation also calls for the establishment of ethics committees to record the needs of the recipients and monitor the medical community to ensure transparency and goodwill. The bill also establishes much tougher criminal liability for violation of organ transplant protocols. Last year, Ukrainian doctors carried out 126 organ transplant operations. 119 of those were kidney transplants, 5 liver, and 1 lung transplant. According to a recent poll conducted by the ratings group, support for organ and tissue transplants is growing. 63% of Ukrainians believe that people have the right to donate their organs to save another person's life.
Last week, RIA Novosti and other Russian media reported that Ukraine's military conducted a night raid on a Ukrainian Catholic monastery looking for conscripts. The sites quoted a priest called Agustin Loiko and claimed that the military surrounded and searched the monastery trying to find young men evading military service. As their source, the Russian sites quoted a dubious website, Novini Zhovkivshchiny и Yavorivshchiny. Judging from its content, the site appears to have been launched only a few days ago. Its first story is dated November 3, the last November 5. The site is currently inactive and lists a warning that the story about the monastery raid is fake. The monastery at the center of this fake story is the Basilian Brothers Monastery in the western Ukrainian city of Zhovka, Lviv Oblast. In a statement published on the Ukrainian Catholic Church portal, the monastery's abbot, Father Volodymyr Malenyuk, said that no such raid had taken place. The priest quoted in the story does not exist, and the photograph used to illustrate the fake story is not of their monastery. The Ukrainian Catholic Church also wrote to the regional military commissar, Alexander Tishenko, advising them of the fake being circulated. The chief of the Ukrainian Catholic Church Military Chaplain's Office for the Zhovka region also told StopFake that no such raid had taken place.
At the end of August, Russia's federal news agency RIA published an article claiming that Ukraine was poised to introduce food ration cards. Citing Ukraine's State Statistics Service, an organization that tracks consumer prices, economic changes, and inflation, the agency claims that the price of basic food products increased by an average of 15 to 20%, while meat and fish have doubled in price. However, according to the Ukrainian State Statistics Service, milk, cheese, eggs, and fish have gone down in price in recent months, while meat prices have experienced a minimal increase. The RIA story is filled with value judgments without any factual evidence to support its claims. Quote, tens of thousands of people living in the former breadbasket of the USSR are on the brink of starvation. The story cites Marina Fedirko, a Social Security employee from an unnamed small city in the northern Chernihiv Oblast, who purportedly showed the federal news agency a list of impoverished local residents who must now rely on welfare. Another person quoted in the article is identified as an activist called Vladislav Taranchuk from something called Ukraine's Consumer Association, who calls the food situation in Ukraine catastrophic. Now, all Ukrainian federal and local government employees must file declarations. Their names and places of employment are available on the internet. There is a Marina Fedirko in that system, but she is from Cherkasy Oblast and not from Chernihiv and works in the State Cadastre Service, which registers property. There is no such organization as Ukraine's Consumer Association, and we were not able to find anyone named Vladislav Taranchuk. The entire story is made up of fake people saying fake things. Last year, StopFake debunked a similar fake story disseminated by the Russian Defense Ministry television channel Zvezda, claiming hungry Ukrainians were snatching bread out of the beaks of pigeons in city centers.
Russian propagandist media not only peddles endless disinformation about Ukraine, they also regularly disseminate the most outrageous conspiracy theories. The latest such theory is that a cache of emails released by WikiLeaks proves newly elected French President Emmanuel Macron helped organize the Maidan protest in Ukraine. The Novorossiya information agency claims that the Macron email exchanges show, quote, unambiguous allusions of support for the coup, unquote, in Ukraine and for the Maidan protest. As proof of Macron's involvement in the Maidan protest, Russian media cite an email from Quentin Guillemin, the president of the Cosmopolitan Project Foundation, a French NGO whose objective is to support civil society in democratically changing countries. On December 7, 2013, Guillemin wrote, quote, Dear friends, at last we are in Kyiv. Follow events in Ukraine on the site ukraine-euromaidan.tumblr.com, unquote. Macron's team responded with, quote, great job, guys, unquote. The website Guillemin cited in his email was a live feed from a French delegation that came to Kyiv to support the Maidan protest and the integration of Ukraine into the European Union. Responding to Russian accusations of orchestrating the Maidan protest, Gilliman joked on Facebook about the influence he and his NGO wield. Quote, "Russian oligarchic television gives me power I didn't know I even had. I had no idea that the Cosmopolitan Project Foundation was so productive," unquote.
Following the latest escalation in fighting in eastern Ukraine, in which 9 Ukrainian soldiers were killed, Russian media have been disseminating fakes claiming that Ukrainian armed forces are shelling OSCE patrols and preventing the monitors from completing their work. The latest OSCE reports, meanwhile, have no mention of any shelling. Responding to StopFake's inquiry about the alleged obstruction, the OSCE said no shelling had taken place. OSCE's latest report does mention an explosion of uncertain origin, quote-unquote, close to where the OSCE monitors were working last week. Now, OSCE monitors file daily reports describing the situation on the ground. These reports are open to the public and available on the organization's website. These latest claims that Ukrainian military were shooting at OSCE patrols are based on statements issued by the Defense Ministry of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic. The Russian proxies also claim that Ukrainian military tried to intercept an OSCE drone. Some Russian media also reported that OSCE patrols were fired on in the town of Yasunovate. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission report for July 21, 2017 states that right after the launch of a drone in the town of Vasilievka, observers heard a loud explosion of uncertain origin 100 to 200 meters to the north. The drone's flight was immediately interrupted. 2 Donetsk People's Republic members were noticed nearby. The OSCE mission in Ukraine reports nearly daily incidents of obstruction to its work in the occupied territories. It is regularly prevented from entering various towns and villages in occupied or separatist-controlled territory, and the self-proclaimed republics have accused the OSCE of not being objective. In a Facebook statement, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission called for the removal of all impediments to their work and demanded that the mission be allowed to move freely to carry out their mandate and not be restricted from doing their job when they report on facts that some deem uncomfortable. StopFake has debunked several fake claims about Ukrainian military firing on OSCE monitors.
Eurovision. You either love it or you hate it. Russian media love writing about it. More specifically, they love writing about how Ukraine was going to mess it all up. As the Eurovision Song Contest wound down into its finals in Kiev this week, Russian media kept mum about the blaring fact that the contest went on as planned without any financial, technical, political, or social glitches and proved to be a success for the organizers. Their gleeful predictions about the contest moving to Moscow, Ukraine running out of money, or being disqualified as the host country has been shown to be complete and utter nonsense. In any word, just your everyday, run-of-the-mill Russian disinformation. In other words, lies. The contest got off to a happy start, with even a surprise marriage proposal thrown in to delight the millions watching. But hang on, let's take a look at some of the dire predictions that the Russian media delighted in pushing ahead of the actual contest. Remember, Kiev was going to kill stray dogs and cats from the city streets before the contest. Fake. Never happened. Ukraine was going around the world with an extended hand soliciting funds for Eurovision. Remember that one? Or the one about how the Ukrainian capital raising utility costs to cover Eurovision expenses. Fake again. Eurovision is a favorite fake news topic for the Russian media. Once again, check out our collage of graphics on this issue.
Dubious and less than legitimate sites regularly publish stories claiming that Ukraine possesses hidden nuclear weapons. The latest version of this unsubstantiated and questionable narrative appeared in the U.S. Veterans Today website, claiming that a nuclear weapon detonated during the March munitions depot fire that occurred in Balaklia near Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine. Author Ian Greenhalgh says his claim is based on real expertise in nuclear fission. He uses emotionally charged words such as Holocaust, sabotage, and mushroom cloud, and video footage of the depot explosion that is no longer available on the internet. The story includes a frame from the alleged video, where Greenhalgh says shows plasma rain falling from a mushroom cloud, a clear sign that this was a nuclear explosion. The photo is in fact a screenshot from a 2013 video of a fire at the Chapayevsk test site in Russia's southeastern Samara province. Greenhalgh uses other photographs to push his claim that Ukraine illegally possesses tactical nuclear SS-21 missiles. He fails to mention that the SS-21s can carry conventional, chemical, or nuclear warheads. Ukraine has never hidden the fact that they have conventional warheads for SS-21s as part of its arsenal, as these missiles are clearly visible at Ukraine's festive military parades. Veterans Today is a marginal site publishing a mixture of legitimate veteran stories, but also specializing in conspiracy theories and dubious stories questioning the September 11th terror attacks in the United States. The business review site SiteJabber calls Veterans Today an alarmist conspiracist site. The reputable Southern Poverty Law Center has featured Veterans Today on their Hate Watch review for its Holocaust denial and other conspiracy theory stories. A typical Veterans Today headline, like this one from April 21st, declares Nikki Haley is a political maniac and a psychopath. Ms. Haley is the American ambassador to the United Nations. And finally, a story from the you really can't make this stuff up category. Russian and Ukrainian media were up in arms last week about a new cafe called the First Lviv Slut Cafe that allegedly opened in the historic city center. It turns out that the hullabaloo was literally much ado about nothing. The cafe is a virtual project, an idea planted in social media by a Kyiv-based PR and marketing agency, proving, once again, how something that does not exist can become a viral topic on the web and begin to live a life of its own. The idea began as a joke. Golova agency marketers and promoters chose a provocative name, created the fake accounts for the Slut Cafe in social media, posted fake menus with sexually suggestive food names, and even published comments from alleged guests who supposedly visited the scandalous cafe and then waited for everyone to take the bait. Soon, journalists were writing articles about who the possible owner of the provocative cafe could be, while others were reporting that journalists were not admitted to the official opening of the cafe. Moral outrage reached a boiling point. The Slut Cafe story shows how easy it is to disseminate fakes and how careless most media are about fact-checking. This fake story was published more than 100 times.
The team at StopFake hopes that you have a fake-free 2018. And remember, if you spot any fakes about Ukraine, always send it to us for a truth autopsy. Happy New Year.